The remnants of humanity floated in the silent expanse of space aboard the Ark of Sol, a massive colony ship housing the last survivors of Earth. Decades ago, Earth's resources had been depleted, and the planet fell victim to an environmental collapse hastened by greed and negligence. A desperate exodus sent humanity to the stars, seeking refuge. Most of the fleet was destroyed by alien forces, leaving the Ark of Sol as the last beacon of humankind. Commander Elena Vega stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars that seemed both beautiful and indifferent. Her sharp green eyes scanned the shimmering void, reflecting the burden of a species on her shoulders. "Any signs of potential habitable planets?" she asked, her voice firm but carrying an undertone of weariness. Lieutenant Raj Patel, the ship's science officer, tapped on the glowing interface in front of him. "Nothing promising within range, Commander. But long-range scans picked up faint energy signatures, something unnatural." Elena frowned. "Define unnatural." Raj hesitated, then swiped to project a hologram of the data. "Consistent pulse patterns, Commander. Artificial in origin. If it's a distress beacon or a sign of alien technology, it could mean salvation or a trap." The air grew heavier in the room as the implications settled in. A rescue could mean a new home, but an encounter with hostile aliens could spell humanity's end. "Set course for the signal," Elena commanded. "We have no other choice." As the Ark of Sol altered its trajectory, its massive thrusters flaring against the backdrop of a nebula, the ship's corridors buzzed with whispers of hope and dread. Among the crew was Captain Malachi Drake, leader of the defense unit, and a man who had faced more battles than he cared to remember. Elena found him in the ship's armory, overseeing preparations. "Drake, we're heading toward an artificial signal. Could be alien tech, maybe a trap. I need your team ready for anything." He grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Always ready, Commander. Let's just hope it's not another Kroll raid." The Kroll were the apex predators of the known galaxy, a race of ruthless warriors who had hunted humanity since their exodus from Earth. Encounters with them had dwindled the fleet to a single ship. As the Ark of Sol approached the source of the signal, tension gripped the crew. The signal led them to an asteroid field where a derelict alien vessel floated, battered but intact. Its sleek, jagged design suggested advanced technology. Elena, Drake, and a small team of engineers suited up and boarded a shuttle to investigate. The derelict ship loomed larger as they approached, its surface shimmering with faintly glowing runes. "This thing's ancient," muttered Lieutenant Zoe Kwan, the team's engineer. "But the power source is still active." "That's impossible." "Stay sharp," Drake barked, his weapon ready. They entered the alien vessel through a breached hull, their boots clanking on the metallic floor. The air was thin but breathable, and the walls seemed to hum faintly, as if alive. Elena led the way, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. "Raj, are you getting this feed?" she asked through her comm. "Affirmative," Raj's voice crackled back. "The runes match no known language. Whatever this ship is, it's older than any records we've seen." Suddenly, the walls lit up with blue light, and the team froze. The runes began to rearrange themselves, forming coherent patterns. "Looks like we woke it up," Zoe whispered nervously. Before anyone could respond, a deep voice echoed through the ship, speaking in an alien tongue. Elena's translator struggled before producing a halting translation. "Who dares disturb the legacy of the Elisari?" "Identify yourselves," Elena said firmly. "We mean no harm." The voice paused, then replied, "Your species fragile. Endangered. Why have you come?" Drake tensed, scanning the room for threats, but Elena held her ground. "Our world is gone. We're looking for a new home. If you have knowledge or technology that can help us, we'll repay the debt however we can." The voice fell silent again, then responded cryptically, "Prove your worth. The Kroll will come. Survive, and we may offer aid." The ship began to vibrate, and alarms blared on the Ark of Sol. Raj's voice came through frantically, "Commander, Kroll ships just entered the sector. They're heading straight for us." Elena gritted her teeth. "Team, get back to the shuttle. Now." As they raced back, the alien ship powered up, its ancient systems roaring to life. The stage was set. Humanity's survival would depend on their ability to fight and the mysterious aid of the Elisari. The Kroll were here, and there was no turning back. The Ark of Soul shook violently as its engines pushed to maximum power, trying to outrun the incoming Kroll fleet. Commander Elena Vega stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the rapidly approaching alien ships. "Status report," she demanded, her voice unyielding as the crew scrambled to their stations. For Kroll battlecruisers on intercept course, Lieutenant Raj Patel called out from his station. "They'll be within weapons range in minutes. If they're as deadly as the reports say, we'll be obliterated long before they reach us." Elena's grip tightened on the command console. The Kroll, the most feared species in the galaxy, were relentless hunters, efficient, brutal, and terrifying in their tactics. Humanity had barely survived their last encounter, and now, they were the hunted. "Shields holding at 50%, Raj continued, his voice tense. "We're not going to last long if we don't take evasive action." "Any help from the Elisari?" Elena asked, her mind racing. Zoe Kwan, the engineer, worked furiously at her console. "I'm trying to access their systems, but it's like nothing I've ever seen before." "It's ancient," she paused, eyes widening. "Wait, there's something. I'm triggering an emergency protocol." "It's..." Zoe's voice cut off as the ship lurched again, this time with a much harsher shake. The team shuttle, carrying Elena, Captain Malachi Drake, and the rest of the boarding party, was docked with the Ark of Soul, and they were still reeling from the encounter with the Elisari vessel. As they rushed to the command deck, Elena's thoughts were torn between the ominous warning from the Elisari and the encroaching threat of the Kroll. "We don't have time for proving our worth," Drake growled as they entered the command center. His dark eyes locked with Elena's. "We need to fight, not plead for help. If those bastards get any closer, it's over." Elena nodded grimly. She had no intention of giving up on humanity so easily. "Raj, how long until they're in range?" 30 seconds, Raj replied, his face pale with the weight of the situation. "If we don't have something more than our standard weapons, we'll be nothing but space debris." A loud, thunderous noise reverberated through the ship, something mechanical, ancient, but unmistakably powerful. Zoe's voice came through again, breathless. "Commander, I think I've just unlocked something. It's an energy weapon. An Elisari-designed quantum cannon." A stunned silence fell over the command center. "You're telling me we have an Elisari weapon on board?" Elena asked. Zoe's face was a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration. "Yes, and it's fully charged. It's huge, Commander. It could turn the tide, but it's going to take time to target and fire." "Then we don't have time," Elena snapped. "We'll need a decoy." She turned to Drake. "Prepare a strike team. We need to draw their fire away from the Ark of Soul long enough for Zoe to get that cannon online." Drake's grin was more savage than reassuring. "It's what we're trained for." "Raj," Elena continued, "initiate evasive maneuvers. Keep the Kroll off our tail, as long as possible. We'll buy Zoe the time she needs." "Aye, Commander," Raj responded, already typing in commands. Within minutes, the Ark of Soul was racing through the asteroid field, utilizing the terrain to dodge Kroll weapons fire. The massive colony ship's hull groaned as its shields absorbed the impacts. Elena's stomach churned at every shake, knowing that each hit brought them closer to catastrophe. Meanwhile, Drake's team, clad in heavy armor and armed with pulse rifles, boarded a secondary shuttle. "We'll need to make this count," he said, his voice low and steady as he locked eyes with his team. "We hit fast, hit hard, and don't stop until the Kroll are forced to focus on us." The shuttle blasted off, rocketing toward one of the Kroll ships that had begun to engage in a tight pursuit. As they closed in, a battle erupted. Plasma weapons lit up the dark void, dancing across the hulls of both ships. The Ark of Soul veered sharply, narrowly missing a devastating shot from one of the Kroll cruisers. Back on the command deck, Zoe's fingers flew over the console, sweat beading on her forehead. The quantum cannon was now primed, its core humming with untapped energy. "Commander," she said, her voice tight. The weapon is ready. I just need to align it, but they're closing in fast. Do it, Elena ordered. Zoe pressed a final sequence of keys, and with a sharp whine, the massive weapon in the belly of the ship began to charge. For a moment, the Arc of Soul seemed to glow, a pulse of blue energy coursing through its frame. The Kroll ships, now circling like sharks, were poised to strike the finishing blow. Elena watched as the distance closed between them and the closest Kroll battlecruiser. She counted the seconds in her head. Firing in 3, 2, 1. A blinding, brilliant beam of energy erupted from the Arc of Soul, streaking across the dark void. It struck the Kroll cruiser with terrifying force, the ship's shield shattering on contact. The cruiser buckled under the intensity of the blast, its hull buckling and warping as the energy tore through it. The Kroll ship exploded in a fiery ball of light, and the shockwave rattled the Arc of Soul. The tide had turned, but only just. Elena's heart raced. One down. Keep it up, people. This is just the beginning. Hashtag part 3. The Kroll counterattack. The deafening roar of the Kroll ship's explosion reverberated through the Arc of Soul, and for a brief moment, hope flickered in the eyes of the crew. They had just landed a critical blow. But Commander Elena Vega knew that the Kroll were relentless. The destruction of one of their battlecruisers wouldn't be enough to stop them. The enemy's fury was only just beginning. All systems report. Elena barked as she steadied herself, her eyes scanning the chaos unfolding before her. Shields at 25% and dropping fast, Raj Patel called out, his voice tinged with panic. We're taking heavy fire from the other 3 Kroll ships. If we don't pull back, we won't last another 5 minutes. The Arc of Soul rocked again as another barrage from the Kroll ships shook the hull. Elena's thoughts raced. They had the quantum cannon, but they could only use it so many times before the energy reserves ran dry. And if the Kroll realized they were fighting an enemy with advanced weaponry, they'd adapt. We can't keep dodging and hoping for the best, Captain Malachi Drake said, his voice low but full of determination. It's time to take the fight to them. Agreed, Elena replied, locking eyes with him. Raj, get us closer to the remaining Kroll ships. We're not running anymore. We're hitting them hard. Commander, that's insane. Raj protested. We're outgunned. They'll rip us apart if we get too close. That's exactly why we need to be close, Elena retorted, her tone resolute. Drake, prep your team for boarding action. If we're going to stand a chance, we need to disable their command centers. Make it personal. Drake's lips twisted into a fierce grin. Now you're speaking my language. He turned to his team, already assembling at the armory door. Gear up, people. We've got Kroll to kill. The Arc of Soul surged forward, its engines blazing as it closed the distance to the remaining Kroll ships. The Kroll had clearly anticipated the move, and now they were relentless in their counterattack. The battle became a savage dance, where every maneuver could mean life or death. Raj, fire the quantum cannon, Elena ordered, her voice calm but laced with urgency. The massive weapon hummed to life once again, but this time, it wasn't a single burst of energy. The Arc of Soul unleashed a continuous beam, a piercing column of pure destructive power, striking a Kroll cruiser directly in its weak spot. The ship buckled under the strain, its hull ripping apart as the cannon drained the last of its energy. But the other 2 Kroll ships didn't hesitate. They adapted quickly, diving into evasive maneuvers, forcing the Arc of Soul to fight harder. Their weapons locked onto the colony ship with deadly accuracy, and the shields flickered, barely holding together against the onslaught. Shields at critical levels. Raj shouted, his face contorted with fear. We're almost through. We can't take another hit like that. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Elena commanded, but before she could say anything else, a shrill alarm interrupted her. Commander, incoming boarding pods. Zoe Kwan's voice cracked through the comms. They've launched boarding pods from their ships. They're trying to get to our engines. Damn it. Elena cursed. Drake, you're on point. Get your team to the engine room. If they disable the engines, we're dead in the water. We're on it. Drake replied sharply, already leading his team toward the shuttle bay. The crew had trained for this moment. In a way, they'd known that the day might come when humanity's last ship would be attacked not just by weapons, but by the sheer brutality of the Kroll. There was no mercy in the void, just violence. As Drake's team launched toward the Kroll boarding pods, Elena's mind raced. The Kroll's tactics were brutal, but there was one thing humanity had that they didn't: ingenuity. The Elisari ship had proven that. It was ancient, mysterious, and unpredictable. It was humanity's only hope. Raj, Elena said through clenched teeth, I need you to access the Elisari ship systems. There's something there that can help us turn the tide. We're not done yet. Raj didn't respond verbally. He knew what needed to be done. His fingers flew over the console, attempting to connect with the ancient Elisari tech embedded in the Ark of Soul. Sparks flew from the interface, and for a brief moment, Raj feared they were about to lose everything. Got it, he yelled, his voice filled with a mixture of triumph and disbelief. I've tapped into their secondary system. I've unlocked an old combat protocol. It's a cloaking device, Commander. Elena's pulse quickened. If they could cloak the Ark of Soul long enough to confuse the Kroll, they might have a chance to disable their remaining ships. Activate it now. Let's give them a surprise. The ship shimmered as the cloaking system kicked in, and for a split second, the Ark of Soul vanished from the sensors of the Kroll. The enemy ships slowed, searching frantically for their target. Ready, Commander. Raj shouted. We've got their attention, but it's only a temporary advantage. Then let's make it count, Elena said with a grin. Drake, you have a green light. Disable those boarding pods before they reach our engines. Drake's team stormed through the boarding pods, taking out Kroll soldiers with a ferocity born of desperation. Each battle was a fight for humanity's survival. The Kroll, growing desperate, launched everything they had left, but the Ark of Soul was no longer the hunted. It had become the hunter. Elena watched as the battle unfolded around her. Every shot, every move, a calculated risk. She could hear the comms crackling as Drake's team cut down the Kroll boarding party, and Raj confirmed that the cloaking system was still holding strong. We're not done yet, Elena muttered to herself. But we're not out of this fight either. As the Kroll ships regrouped, they knew one thing for certain. They were facing an enemy that refused to die. The Ark of Soul drifted through the void, its cloaking system still holding strong, and the crew was riding the razor's edge of survival. The Kroll ships had regrouped, but the advantage had shifted, if only for a moment. Elena Vega stood at the command center, her gaze sharp and calculating as the battle continued. She knew they couldn't rely on the cloaking system forever. The Kroll were adaptive, and they would soon find a way to break through. Status report, Raj, Elena asked, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Raj Patel worked frantically at his station, his fingers moving over the controls with precision. Shields are at minimal power. Cloaking device is holding, but I've been running diagnostic checks. If we fire any weapons while cloaked, it'll deplete our energy reserves in minutes. We need to stay hidden long enough for Drake's team to finish disabling their boarding pods, Elena said, her mind calculating their next move. And we still have to deal with the remaining 2 Kroll ships. We can't rely on the quantum cannon forever. We still have the Elisari tech, Raj offered, his voice tinged with hope. There's something else I've uncovered. Another protocol, one related to weaponry, but it's unlike anything we've ever used. Elena raised an eyebrow. Explain? It's not just a weapon, it's a device that manipulates gravitational fields. It's a weapon that can bend the very fabric of space to our will, potentially collapsing their ships in on themselves. But it's risky, Commander. It could destabilize the area around us, cause catastrophic damage to our own ship. Elena's jaw clenched. The stakes were higher than ever. If they used this technology, they might destroy the Kroll ships, but they could also doom the Ark of Soul. Yet, if they didn't act now, they'd be sitting ducks, unable to escape or defend themselves. Do it, she said finally, her voice resolute. Activate the gravitational weapon. Raj nodded, but his face betrayed the weight of the decision. Understood. Meanwhile, Captain Malachi Drake's team had infiltrated the Kroll boarding pods, cutting through the enemy soldiers with ruthless efficiency. They were making their way through the maze of corridors on one of the Kroll battlecruisers, taking down Kroll warriors in hand-to-hand combat or with precise shots from their advanced pulse rifles. The Kroll were formidable, but the humans were relentless. Drake's team encountered their first real challenge when they reached the Kroll Command Center, an area heavily guarded and bristling with defense systems. The doors to the command center hissed open as Drake signaled for his team to take cover. They were outnumbered, but they had something the Kroll didn't: tactics. "We can't fight them head-on," Drake said, scanning the area. "We need to disable the communication systems first, and then we'll make our move." Zoe Kwan's voice crackled through the comms. "Commander, I've almost cracked the Kroll's internal comms. Once I'm in, we can coordinate your assault from here." "Good," Drake replied. "We're moving in." On my mark. The team moved swiftly, using the shadows to their advantage as they positioned themselves around the command center. Drake gave the signal, and the battle began. Shots rang out, but the team was quick, dismantling the Kroll defenses one by one. For a moment, it seemed like victory was within reach. But then, a shocking development unfolded. The Kroll commander, a hulking figure clad in heavy armor, stepped out from behind a reinforced barricade. His voice, deep and menacing, boomed over the battlefield. "You think you've won? Your pathetic resistance is futile. The Kroll will consume everything: your planet, your species, your hope." The commander's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "You are nothing but prey to us." Drake clenched his fists, his pulse racing. "We'll see about that." As the Kroll commander advanced, something unexpected happened. The walls of the command center began to warp, as if reality itself was bending. The gravitational field surrounding the area fluctuated violently, and the Kroll soldiers staggered, their footing unsteady. "Raj, what the hell did you do?" Drake yelled into the comms. "Hold tight, Drake." Raj's voice crackled through the static. "I activated the Elisari weapon. You need to finish them off, now." The entire command center began to warp, and the Kroll forces struggled to maintain their footing. Gravity distorted around them, throwing them off balance. The Kroll commander, his massive form shifting under the gravitational strain, let out a strangled roar before crumpling to the ground. "Now, Drake." Elena's voice rang out, urgent and commanding. "Finish them before they recover." Drake didn't hesitate. He and his team moved in with brutal precision, taking out the remaining Kroll soldiers before they could regroup. The gravitational anomaly wreaked havoc on their systems, and the Kroll were thrown into disarray. The fight was over. But as the battle ended and the team regrouped, something felt off. A sense of unease hung in the air. It was too easy. The Kroll commander's last words lingered in Drake's mind. "Your resistance is futile." "Zoe, any word from the Ark?" Drake asked, his voice tight. "Commander, you need to get back to the Ark," Zoe replied. "Something's wrong. Raj, he's been acting strange." Drake's stomach churned. "What do you mean?" "His communications have been off. And I've just run a diagnostic on the Elisari systems. There's a discrepancy. Raj didn't just unlock the gravitational weapon, the transmission was cut off suddenly, leaving only static." Drake's eyes widened. Raj. A cold realization washed over him. The battle was won, but at what cost? Was Raj's discovery of the Elisari technology a gift, or had they just made a dangerous mistake? The team made their way back to the Ark of Soul, but unease lingered. As they boarded the ship, Elena's voice echoed through the comms. "We have to be ready. The Kroll may be finished, but there's something else out there, something we may not have counted on." Drake's heart sank as he looked out at the stars, knowing that the real battle had just begun. The Kroll might be defeated, but the true enemy could be closer than they realized. The Ark of Soul had never felt more like a prison. Despite the victory over the Kroll, an unsettling silence hung over the crew. Elena Vega paced the command center, her eyes dark with the weight of recent events. Raj Patel, Once the ship's trusted tech officer was nowhere to be found. Zoe Kwan had confirmed that something was wrong with the Elisari systems, a discrepancy that she couldn't quite explain. But Elena had a sinking feeling in her gut that told her this was no mere glitch. "Where the hell is Raj?" Elena asked, her voice a blend of frustration and concern. "I'm still tracking him, Commander," Lieutenant Raj Patel said from his station, his eyes glued to the console. "He was last seen near the engineering bay, but there's no sign of him now. It's like he vanished." Elena's stomach twisted. Something was off. Raj had been acting strangely ever since they activated the Elisari weapon, and now his disappearance was more than coincidental. She had trusted him. He had been more than just a colleague. But now, doubts began to creep into her mind. What if Raj wasn't the ally he seemed to be? "Get security on it," Elena ordered, her voice firm. "I want every inch of this ship searched. No stone left unturned." As the crew scrambled to follow orders, a chill settled over the Ark of Soul. Drake's team, having returned from the Kroll battlecruisers, was now locked in their quarters, strategizing their next move. Despite their victory, their eyes were filled with suspicion and unease. "We need answers, Commander," Drake said, his voice cold as he approached Elena. "We can't just ignore what's happening. Raj's disappearance isn't a coincidence. Someone's pulling strings behind the scenes, and I don't think it's the Kroll." Elena turned to face him, her jaw clenched. "I know, Drake. But we don't have time for second-guessing. The Kroll are down, but there's something bigger at play here. We need to find Raj before it's too late." Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the ship, piercing the tense silence. "Unauthorized access detected in the Elisari systems." Raj Patel's voice echoed over the comms, but this time, it was distorted, distant. "I've unlocked something that can save us all. The truth is out there. You'll all see soon." Elena's blood ran cold. It was Raj's voice, but something wasn't right. His words were fragmented, as though he were speaking through a fog. There was no mistaking it. Raj had gone rogue. "Damn it," Elena muttered, her mind racing. "Raj has triggered something. We need to stop him before he unleashes whatever this is." "On it," Drake growled, his hand gripping the hilt of his combat knife. "I'll take a team to the Elisari control room. We'll shut him down." As Elena prepared to head to the bridge, a loud crash echoed from the hallway outside the command center. The air shifted with a dark presence. Elena froze. Her heart thudded in her chest. "Drake," she whispered urgently, "get your team to the control room now. I'll hold him off here." But before Drake could respond, the door to the command center hissed open. Standing in the doorway was Raj Patel. His eyes were wide with an eerie, unnatural glow, his skin pale, and his expression twisted into something unfamiliar. "Raj," Elena called, stepping forward, her voice laced with disbelief. He didn't respond. Instead, he raised his hand, and the air around them seemed to warp. A strange, heavy energy radiated from him. Elena's instinct screamed at her to retreat, but her feet remained rooted to the floor, unable to look away from the haunting figure before her. "You shouldn't have trusted me, Elena," Raj finally spoke, his voice tinged with malice. "I've seen what the Elisari technology can do. It's more than just weapons. It's a key, and I've unlocked it." Elena's pulse quickened. "What the hell are you talking about, Raj?" "The Elisari were ahead of their time," Raj continued, his smile crooked and unsettling. "They didn't just build weapons. They built something that can reshape reality itself. The Kroll weren't the only threat, Commander. I've seen the future. I've seen what we can do with this power. We can become gods." Elena's mind reeled as Raj's words sank in. He was no longer the person she had trusted. He was something else, something far more dangerous. The Elisari tech had changed him, twisted him into a pawn of something greater. "You've gone insane," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper, but she wasn't afraid. "Not yet." She was angry. Raj's twisted grin deepened. "You think I'm the crazy one? I'm the only one who understands. The Kroll were only the beginning. I'm going to bring an end to all of this, take humanity beyond the stars." beyond the reach of your petty resistance. With a flick of his hand, the gravitational anomaly around Raj intensified. The walls of the command center warped, and the lights flickered violently. The ship groaned under the pressure, the very fabric of space bending around them. "Raj, stop!" Elena shouted, taking a step forward. But Raj wasn't listening. He raised his hand higher, and the floor beneath them began to shift, pulling them toward him. The air grew thick with a force far stronger than anything Elena had ever felt. The Elisari technology, which Raj had unlocked, was now turning on them, manipulating the laws of physics itself. Just as the pressure reached its peak, the door to the command center slammed open again. Drake and his team rushed in, weapons drawn. But the sight that met them was something out of a nightmare. Raj stood at the center of the room, a sickly energy swirling around him. Elena, struggling to keep her balance, fought against the pull of the gravity warping around her. "Drake!" Elena yelled. "We need to stop him before he triggers the full power of the Elisari tech." Drake didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, using the momentum of his dive to tackle Raj to the ground, knocking him off balance. But Raj's eyes flashed with fury. He shoved Drake off with unnatural strength and stood up, hands crackling with energy. "You think you can stop me?" Raj sneered, his voice now distant and hollow.
"You'll see, Elena."
"We'll all see." In that moment, Elena realized that Raj wasn't just lost. He had become a weapon of the Elisari technology, a vessel for something far darker than she had ever imagined. The Ark of Soul was on the brink of being torn apart, and their most trusted ally had turned into their greatest threat. The true battle for humanity's survival was only beginning. The tension in the Ark of Soul was suffocating. Raj Patel, once the ship's brightest mind, now stood as an unrecognizable figure. The power of the Elisari technology surged around him, distorting the very space and time within the command center. His eyes glowed with unnatural intensity, and his smile twisted into something sinister, his hands crackling with energy. "Raj, listen to me," Elena shouted, her voice strained but firm. "This isn't you. The power you're trying to control, it's destroying you." Raj's lips curled into a cold, cruel smile. "You still don't understand, do you, Elena? You're all so limited by your primitive understanding of the universe. The Elisari didn't just build weapons, they built the future. And I've unlocked it. We don't need to fear the Kroll anymore. We can transcend them. We can become infinite." The walls of the command center seemed to warp again, as if the very reality around them was bending to Raj's will. Elena staggered backward, struggling to maintain her footing as the gravitational anomalies intensified. She had seen Raj use the Elisari tech before, on the Ark of Soul, no less, but this was something else entirely. The power surging from him was no longer just about weaponry. It was a force that seemed to break all the natural laws, something far darker and more insidious. "We can't let him do this," Elena muttered under her breath, watching as Drake and his team regrouped, preparing to take action. "We have to stop him before he tears the entire ship apart." But before they could make a move, Raj lifted his hand again, and a pulse of energy shot through the room. The ship groaned under the strain, and the lights flickered as if they might go out completely. The air was thick with tension as Raj began to speak again, his voice now cold and distant. "The Kroll were only a test, a means to an end," Raj said. "And now, humanity will be the true inheritor of the universe. We are the ones who will wield the power of the Elisari. The stars will bow before us." "Raj!" Drake shouted, charging forward, his team right behind him. "You're not thinking clearly. This power, it's too much for any one person." But Raj wasn't listening. His body shimmered, as though his very form were shifting, becoming part of the distorted reality around him. The gravitational forces in the room intensified, and Drake's team struggled to keep their balance, weapons raised in defense. "We're wasting time," Elena snapped, scanning the room for anything they could use to counter Raj's power. She knew there had to be a way to neutralize the Elisari tech, but she didn't have the luxury of time. The ship was becoming increasingly unstable with every passing second. Suddenly, a thought struck her, a possibility that had been buried in the back of her mind since they'd first encountered the Elisari ship. The technology was powerful, yes, but it wasn't invincible. The Elisari had left behind clues in the ship's systems, hints at how they had managed to control such immense power. If Raj had unlocked the power, perhaps she could reverse the process. But she needed access to the core systems, and that meant getting to the heart of the ship.
Zoe.
Elena shouted, speaking into her communicator. I need you to access the Elisari control core. You'll need to bypass the security protocols, but if we can get control of their systems, we might have a chance at shutting Raj down. We're on it. Zoe's voice crackled back through the comms, though there was an edge of urgency in her tone. But Commander, Raj is more than just a man now. He's a conduit for the Elisari power. If we try to disconnect him from the tech, we might lose him completely. Elena's heart pounded. She wasn't ready to lose Raj, but they didn't have a choice. The risk of allowing him to continue wielding the Elisari power was too great. He was already unstable, and the longer they waited, the more dangerous he became. Just get it done, Zoe, Elena said, her voice resolute. We don't have much time. As Zoe and her team worked to override the security systems, Elena turned back to Raj, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she was about to make. Raj was a casualty of his own ambition, a man who had once been driven by the desire to save humanity, now consumed by the very power he had hoped to control. She could see the anguish in his eyes as the energy surged around him, tearing him apart from the inside. Raj. Elena called out again, her voice softer now. You don't have to do this. There's still a chance to stop this madness. Come back to us. For a moment, Raj's expression flickered. His hands trembled, and the energy surrounding him seemed to waver. Elena felt a flicker of hope, but it was fleeting. No, Elena, Raj whispered, his voice barely audible. I've seen the truth. You can't stop what's coming. No one can. And with that, the energy around Raj intensified again, the gravitational distortions growing violent. The walls groaned, and Elena felt herself being pulled toward him, her feet lifting off the ground.
Zoe.
Elena screamed, her voice desperate. We need control of the system, now. I'm trying. Zoe's voice responded through the comms, but the interference was growing stronger. The ship was becoming more unstable with each passing second. Just a few more seconds, Commander. But it was too late. Raj had reached the peak of his transformation. The energy surrounding him became a blinding vortex, and Elena realized with horror that Raj wasn't just manipulating reality anymore. He was reshaping it. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing Elena to the ground. For a moment, everything was disorienting, a cacophony of sounds, the ship tearing apart, the warping of space itself. Then everything went silent. The room fell still. Elena's ears rang, and her vision blurred as she struggled to her feet. She had no idea what had just happened, but one thing was clear. The Ark of Soul was no longer the ship it had once been. And neither were they. Elena! Drake shouted, his voice cutting through the disorienting quiet. Are you all right? Elena's mind raced. The Elisari tech was still active, but Raj was gone. There was no sign of him, no trace of the man they had once known. Where is he? Elena whispered, her voice trembling. She stood up, her heart pounding. Where is Raj? A voice, deep and distant, echoed from the ship's comms. It wasn't Raj's voice, but something else, something ancient and powerful. You cannot undo what has been done, the voice intoned. The future is now set. The path to ascension has begun. Elena's heart sank. They hadn't just lost Raj. They had lost control of the ship, and worse, of their very destiny. The war was no longer against the Kroll. It was against something far greater, something far older. And the Ark of Soul was now at the center of it all. The silence that followed Raj's disappearance was almost worse than the chaos that had preceded it. The Ark of Soul hung in the void, suspended between reality and something far darker. Elena Vega stood at the command center, her hands gripping the console as the weight of what had just transpired crashed down on her. They had lost Raj. They had lost their most brilliant officer. But even more unsettling was the voice that had echoed through the ship's comms, a voice that wasn't Raj's, but something else, something ancient and unknowable. Drake stood beside her, his face hard with determination, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. What now, Commander? What do we do? The ship systems are still acting up. The Elisari tech it's almost like it's alive now. And that voice. I don't know, Elena admitted, her voice strained. We've lost control of the ship and we've lost Raj. But I'm not going to let whatever's happening here destroy everything we've fought for. We'll figure this out, but we need to move quickly. The ship was unstable, the gravitational anomalies still in effect, distorting the interior and making it nearly impossible to maintain a steady course. Every moment was a gamble. Elena had no idea how much longer the Ark of Soul could hold together. They couldn't stay in this limbo forever. We need to access the core systems, Zoe Kwan's voice crackled through the comms, the urgency palpable. I've found a way to connect with the Elisari control interface, but we're not sure what kind of lockout has been triggered. We'll need to be careful. We can't waste time, Elena snapped, pushing the thoughts of Raja's transformation out of her mind for the moment. Do what you can, Zoe. We'll hold off whatever comes next. But as the crew prepared for their next move, the unsettling voice echoed once more, this time louder, more distinct, as if it was coming from all around them. The ascension is inevitable. The power of the Elisari will reshape the cosmos. Humanity will be more than human, and the Ark of Soul will be its vessel. You cannot stop it. Who are you? Elena demanded, her voice tinged with desperation. What have you done to Raj? The voice was silent for a moment before answering, its tone even and cold. Raj was only a conduit, a means to an end. His transformation was necessary for the ascension. But now, the ship itself is the true key. The power you seek to control is no longer yours. Elena's pulse quickened. What do you want? The same thing humanity has always wanted, the voice replied. To ascend beyond the limitations of your physical form. To become eternal. The Elisari left their legacy for this purpose. Only the worthy may inherit the power. Raj was the first step, but there will be others. You will be the next. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently, throwing everyone off balance. Systems flickered, and the hum of the engines began to falter, as if the Ark of Soul were straining under the weight of the power that Raj had unleashed. Elena's heart raced. They were running out of time. Zoe, do you have access yet? Elena barked, her eyes scanning the console for any sign of hope. Almost there, Zoe's voice came back, shaky but determined. I'm bypassing the lockout now. Just a few more seconds. But before she could finish, the ship lurched again, this time harder, as if something within it were breaking free. The air around them grew thick with energy, and the very walls of the Ark of Soul seemed to ripple, as if they were bending to a force beyond comprehension. Brace yourselves, Elena ordered, but the force was too great. The ship was being pulled, twisted, as though it was being torn apart by the very power it had unlocked. Elena's vision blurred as she struggled to keep her footing, her hands gripping the console to steady herself. The voice returned, louder and more oppressive this time. You cannot resist. The ascension is inevitable. The ship is no longer yours. The universe is ours to reshape.
Zoe.
Elena shouted through the chaos, her voice strained. What's happening? I'm trying. Zoe responded, her voice strained and frantic. The core is destabilizing. The Elisari systems are feeding off Raja's transformation. If we don't shut it down now, the ship will be lost. Elena's mind raced. There had to be something they could do. She knew the Ark of Soul wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience, of their will to survive against all odds. And she wasn't going to let some unseen force take that from them. Listen to me, Zoe, Elena said, her voice cold with resolve. I need you to shut down the Elisari systems. Whatever it takes. Even if it means destroying the core. We can't let this power consume us. There was a long pause before Zoe's voice crackled back through the comms, sounding more determined than ever. Understood, Commander. I'll initiate the shutdown sequence. But you need to be ready. This is going to be rough. Elena didn't hesitate. Do it. As Zoe initiated the shutdown sequence, the Ark of Soul trembled violently, and a blinding light filled the command center. Elena shielded her eyes, feeling the ship groan under the strain. She could feel the energy building, too much power, too fast. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the light faded. The ship went silent. Elena opened her eyes, her breath catching in her throat. The gravitational anomalies had stopped. The power surging from the Elisari tech had dissipated. The Ark of Soul was no longer being pulled apart, and the walls no longer warped under the force of Raja's transformation. But the victory was bittersweet. The control core had been shut down, but the damage had been done. The ship was still floating, drifting in space, its systems on the brink of failure. The ascension Raj had spoken of had been prevented, but at a great cost. We did it, Zoe said, her voice shaky but triumphant. Elena nodded, though her eyes were hollow with exhaustion. For now. But as the crew gathered to assess the damage, there was one thing that weighed heavily on Elena's mind. Raj was gone. And the voice they had heard, the voice of whatever had manipulated Raj, was still out there. It hadn't been destroyed. It had only been delayed. The Ark of Soul was still adrift in the vast emptiness of space, but now, more than ever, Elena understood that their fight was far from over. The Kroll were not the true threat. What had happened to Raj, and what he had unleashed, was only the beginning of something much darker. Humanity's struggle for survival was not just against alien forces. It was a fight for their very soul. And the true enemy was waiting.